Super Rugby Pacific Round 1 kicks off 7:30 p.m. this Friday, New Zealand time. I'll be going over each game, looking at the lineups, and trying to make a prediction on how I think each game might go, going over all the players. I'll make another video. We'll go over fantasy, look at my fantasy team, look at who the good picks might be according to what these games might look like. Tune in for that one after this. Now, game one, first up, Crusaders versus Hurricanes in Christchurch. This game's probably got the most question marks over it compared to all the other games we have this weekend. The big question really is, what are the Crusaders going to be like this year? Are they going to be terrible again? Are they going to step it up? They did start to improve at the end of last year's Super Rugby season. They've had a lot of time to think about what they need to do, and I think their home crowd, they might turn up for this one. I think that they'll be quietly confident that they'll be able to turn it around after how things started to improve at the end of last year, and I think they'll be turning up for this first game to really set the tone. Now, the big thing that really is going to define this matchup is the fact that both teams have a massive injury ward. I don't know what they were doing over the preseason, but I mean, look at all these injuries for both teams. A lot of big names are missing. Big one for the Crusaders is Cody Taylor. Lineout was really terrible until he came back last year. They're also missing George Bell. He's their backup hooker. Had led probably the worst Crusaders lineout I've ever seen in my life last year, but got picked for every single All Black squad and never played a game. What a legend. They've got Scott Barrett, but they are missing their second tier locks, Quinton Strange, Jamie Hanna. Instead, they have Antonio Chalfoun filling in. He's a little bit green, but he does have a few matches under his belt, so it could be worse. The back row is still pretty stacked here. Cullen Grace, Blackadder, Leo Willie, pretty much a full-strength back row, even though they are missing a couple of loose forwards here. Gardner and Anderson, not familiar with this guy. Then in the halves, Noah Hotham, Taha Kimura. Big question marks over 10 for the Crusaders this year. It was a real sore point for them last year. It's probably going to continue to be so. They brought in James O'Connor in the off-season, but he is on the bench. He's probably going to be the steadying hand. We'll see how that works out. And in the backs, Severis on the wing, Havili, Almoa, pretty much a full-strength midfield. Shea Fihaki at 14, making room for Will Jordan at 15. He didn't get any game time last year. He will be instrumental this year, especially with the weakness at 10. They'll probably be looking for Jordan and Hotham to do a lot more of the playing to make up for that. On the bench, Dallas McLeod to come in the midfield. George Bauer, he'll be good off the bench as well. Not much else going on here. And for the Hurricanes, they've got equally a large injury ward. Biggest name here, probably Almoa, and also in the halves as well. Brett Cameron out. Lucas Cashmore, the new pickup from Auckland, young 10, he's not available. Instead, they'll be starting Harry Godfrey. Now, Harry Godfrey's a pretty handy player. I'm not sure if we saw him play at 10 last year. But again, similar situation at the Crusaders. They've got really green 10s. And I think the same thing will happen. I think they'll be looking to the 9s here to do more of the playing. And for the Hurricanes, you got Cam Roigard. Really, that's a pretty handy guy to have to step up. And when we look in the forwards, though, I think this might be where the disparity is. Obviously, Almoa out. We've got Devry filling in here. On either side of him, you got Mafaleo and Xavier Numia, two pretty handy and experienced props. Tossie and Rakiti Stones on the bench as well. Interesting that Tossie isn't starting. But, you know, when I compare this to the Crusaders front row, I think the Crusaders will have an edge here. The one thing that was quite strong for them last year was their scrum, And I expect that to carry on this year. And I think without Tyrell Lomax, Hurricanes, they might be a bit vulnerable here in this game. We might see those scrums tipping towards the Crusaders. And in the locks as well, Walker Leaweri, pretty handy, but they don't have Zach Gallagher, the young import from the Crusaders. Actually, this guy looks really good, but we're not going to be able to see him play. And even though Crusaders have injuries in their locks, they do still have Scott Barrett. We know that Scott Barrett, he can pick off those lineouts, he can get those steals. So I think scrum and lineout set piece, that's what the Crusaders will be targeting this game. And I think there is a bit of vulnerability there on both fronts in the Hurricanes. Also with the Hurricanes, they don't actually throw to their back row that much compared to other teams. They don't throw to the 8. So might be something that the Crusaders can really get a read on and make those picks easier for Scott Barrett. Now, in the backs, though, again, not major issues here. We do have some serious injuries, though. They are missing, he's not on the list here, but Billy Proctor. He was huge last year for them, but he's not in today. Instead, we have Umaga Jensen and Balin Sullivan, still two pretty handy players in their own right. And 14 and 15, I'm not actually familiar with these two players, so maybe going to be a little bit softer on the outsides than they normally are. And again, that's another thing I will tip in favor of the Crusaders. Looking at the benches as well, one big name on the bench for the Hurricanes is Peter Lakai. They will be getting big reinforcements off the bench in the form of him. Riley Hohipper backing up a 10 on the bench as well. He is one of the 10s who was filling in and kind of struggling, just like Kamara was last year at the Crusaders. So, yeah, really, really serious problems at 10 here. Irianari, pretty handy halfback, but, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't want to be replacing Roigard in a game like this unless you absolutely have to. And for the Crusaders, James O'Connor, Dallas McLeod, that is at least some experience to come off the bench that the Crusaders can try and lean on if they have to. George Bauer coming off the bench as well. That will keep their scrum strong all the way through this game. So, yeah, based on all of that, I'm picking the Crusaders. They are at home. Their front five, it looks stronger through the 80. I think they're going to target the Hurricanes up front, and I think that's what's going to give them the edge to take out this game. Crusaders by 12 and under, by the way. Coming up straight after that, we've got Waratahs versus the Highlanders at Allianz in Sydney. This is the next game that I have the most question marks over, because we've got two teams who last year they were kind of middle of the pack to the sort of weaker side, but not at the bottom. Well, actually, the Waratahs did finish bottom. They won only 2 games last year, both of which against the Crusaders, funnily enough. But this year, both of these teams, they should be on the up. The Highlanders have Jamie Joseph back in the driver's seat, and the Waratahs, they've picked up a few big names in the off-season. Now that the Rebels are gone, the Waratahs have managed to snag some of their big names. They've got Taniela Tupou. They picked up Rob Leota, Andrew Callaway. Tupou and Callaway in particular, I think those are two guys who were really strong performers last year. Not a lot of injuries in this game. The Waratahs, they have 2 injuries, not major starting players. For the Highlanders, it's a little bit worse. Radumaita Vukinipkins, he's out. No Jonah Recchi, no Jonah Lowe, no Umaga Jensen, TK Howden, and no Oliver Haig. Down here for the Waratahs, Lee Warner and fake Jay Barrett, the long-lost propping cousin. He's not in the mix. When you look at these lineups, again, front row for the Waratahs quite strong here. Angus Bell, Dave Poraki and Taniela Tupou. Opposite him, you've got Ethan de Groot. That's going to be a huge battle in the scrum. Soini Vakena down from Auckland, and Saula Ma'u. Not familiar with him. So this again is another game. I think there might be a front row with an edge here. We might see the Waratahs with an edge at scrum time. But, I mean, de Groot, he'll be opposite Tupou. He's no slouch. We'll have to see what happens. Gonna enjoy watching that battle. Into the locks, we've got Fabian Holland, the big man. Really looking forward to this guy playing this season. I believe this year he might also be eligible for the All Blacks. Keep an eye on him. We also have Mitch Danche. For the Waratahs, we have Miles Amatasero, low-key, pretty decent player. Also have Hugh Sinclair, not familiar with him. In the back row, some familiar names: Rob Leota, Charlie Gamble, Lungi Gleeson. Two guys kind of solid for the Highlanders in the back row. We're not really familiar with these guys except Hugh Renton and Sean Withy. Renton, pretty solid, not a super strong back row for either side though. And then we go to the halves for the Highlanders. We got some newer guys, Nathan Hastie and Tane Robinson. They've opted to play Sam Gilbert at the back, and they've put Cam Miller on the bench. This is kind of interesting. Tane Robinson, there must be something they see there with this guy. I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes. And for the Waratahs, we've got a really familiar combination, Jake Gordon and Tane Edmond. Jake Gordon, really experienced captain. Tane Edmond, he's been around for a couple years now. He's not too bad. So we've got a lot of experience here in the Waratahs halves compared to the Highlanders. That could have an impact on this game. On the wings, Max Jorgensen, very good. Andrew Callaway, the big signing. And also at the back, Suali'i. Now, we all saw that massive debut he had for the Wallabies. Going to be really interesting to see how he kicks on at Super Rugby. He's at fullback. He's going to have a lot of freedom to run with the ball, and I expect he will do so. Opposite in the Highlanders, we've got Sam Gilbert at the back. Caleb Tangitau, Auckland Sevens player, now down at the Highlanders. Looking forward to seeing him get a lot of time. Really talented guy. And Michael Manson, not familiar with this guy at all. So, again, I think the Highlanders, they're outmatched a bit in the back three. In the midfield, though, Timothy Tavatavanawai, the turnover specialist, competition leader, I believe, for turnovers, pretty close to it, if not pretty good effort for a back either way. And also Taniela Talia, this guy's actually pretty good. He didn't get a lot of game time last year. He got injured, but before that happened, he was actually looking quite dangerous in that midfield. And I'm hoping he gets a lot more game time this year, and we really get to see what his potential is. For the Waratahs, Joey Walton, Lalakai Fakiri, pretty solid midfield. But I kind of really rate the Highlanders midfield here. Still though, overall, when you consider the halves and the outside backs, I think the Waratahs do have the edge in the backs as well. So I am kind of favouring for this game, especially being at home in Sydney. It's a new year, it's a fresh start. Hopefully the crowd turns up and gives them a chance. Also, didn't know the benches. Fakatava is on the bench, interestingly, so there is a lot of experience there to bring on in the halves if they do need it. And I suspect they probably will. I suspect we will see him either way. Fakatava, he's one of those guys who can come on and really likes to snipe, and he did it with huge effect behind Aaron Smith for all those years, and he will make an impact in this game when he comes on. If the Highlanders do need to play catch up, he's the sort of guy who can really spark something there. Not too familiar with these guys on the bench for the Waratahs. Not sure which bench is going to be stronger, to be honest. You tell me. But still, going to side with the Waratahs for this one. Close game though. Waratahs by less than 12. After that, Saturday afternoon, we have Fijian and Drua versus the Brumbies in Fiji, which is the most important thing to note. Last year, these teams met. I think the Brumbies just scraped past them in Canberra. So the Drua, I mean, they were often so poor when they travelled. Now playing home at Fiji, I think they're a real chance here. This is a live game, and it could go either way, and it could get quite scrappy as well as these Drua games often do. And with the Brumbies, they've been on this a bit of a slide the last couple of years. I think last year they looked weaker than I've seen them for a long time. They got absolutely blasted by the New Zealand teams when previously they've been able to hold their own better than anyone else in Australia generally, but last year not so much. Their set piece sort of fell off. Their maul isn't a weapon anymore. And this off season, the Brumbies, they, even though the Rebels have disbanded and dispersed all their talent, the Brumbies, they really weren't able to pick up any big names. So yeah, I'm really rating the Endure here. I'm really siding with them on this one, but it's going to be close. This year they are going to be leaning on Caleb Muntz in the 10 jersey, talented guy. Yosefo Masi, he's just an absolute weapon in the midfield. He'll be super relevant this game, and they're not missing a huge amount of players. Rava Talmunda, he's probably the big name. They will be missing him. For the Brumbies, on the other hand, they are missing Rob Valentini. That's pretty huge. They are missing Charlie Cowell as well. So they are really a bit depleted in their back row. And they've got Luke Reimer, Rory Squat, and Tai Tuilima. Yeah, not looking that great, not looking that strong. This lock pairing, Tom Hooper's all right. Lachlan Shaw, quite green. Billy Pollard at hooker versus, a Canaveri. He's a legend around the park. And in the backs, in the halves, Lonergan and Lolosio, that's an experienced, pretty rock-solid combo for them. Corey O'Toole's awesome. Andy Muirhead's awesome. This back line, it's not too bad, but it's it's not the most dangerous one you're going to come across in this competition. Within Drua, they're all just so skilled. They can all sort of break you apart at any time. They love to play with ball in hand. They don't kick the ball. I think by a big margin, they kick the least in the whole competition. Discipline is an issue for them. I believe they are the most penalized team in the competition, or if they're not, they're second, and it's really close. Key for them is, gonna be keeping the discipline under control. Don't get stuck playing in your own half. Yeah, hopefully that crowd really gets behind them and picks them up, and that gives them the edge to get over the line. I will actually be picking the in draw for this game by less than 12, but it will be close. Blues versus Chiefs. This is the big run back of last year's grand final. The Blues ended up winning that 40-10 or something. It ended up being quite a hiding. It was the classic Blues forwards shut out the Chiefs. They just weren't able to compete up front, which means they've learned that lesson and they've had a lot of time to work out another plan to deal with how the Blues play. No one else was able to work it out last year, but if anyone's going to do it, it might be the Chiefs. On the injury front, Blues have a lot of injury. The Chiefs don't, but the ones they do have, they're kind of big. Wallace Satiti, he's out for the season. Talkiaho's out for this game. That's a big loss because I think that Chiefs front row, it is kind of, just generally speaking, a bit soft. They do need Takiaho. Obviously, he's great around the park. Missing Coombs Fabling as well. Missing Tahudi Orangi, not their starting 9, but, missing a bit of depth. Could be relevant later. And when we look at the starting lineups, let's look at the Blues injuries, because look at this. Zahn Sullivan, Stephen Perifetta, they're out. Not a big deal, though, because the Blues, they're starting Harry Plummer at 10, Bowden Barrett at fullback. They just have an embarrassment of riches in 10 and 15. They can't fit them all on the field anyway. Oscar Satutu's out for this game. Last year's player of the year, that's pretty big. Sam Derry out for the season. That really sucks for them. He's big. Kurt Eklund, backup hooker. He's out. Riccatelli, he's the main starter. He's in though. PJ Sheck, some wider squad guys. Pretty bad for the Blues, but could be worse. Could be worse. Also, looking at these benches, both benches are pretty strong for the Blues and the Chiefs. Fosatua, Ta'avao, Shea Clark. This is a new guy. Apparently, he's a huge athlete, so looking forward to his debut. Looking forward to seeing what he can do. Choke, Christie, Evans, Cole Forbes, all players who got decent game time last year, even though they weren't always the preferred starters. Evans got a lot of game time when Rico was injured, so definitely a proven performers. And for the Chiefs, Bradley Slater, Aben Ross, Ruben O'Neill, Tupovai, Summer Penny Finau, two big names on the bench here. Cortez Ratima, ALB, and Amoni Nadawa. Again, this is just a string of preferred starters on the bench there. So Chiefs are going to be huge when their bench comes on, and maybe that's part of their strategy. They want to run this Blues pack around, and then at the end of the game, when they're tired, they're hurting, that's when you bring on the big guns and you up the pace and you just run past them. That's what I think the Chiefs are going to try and do. That's probably the way to beat the Blues this year as well. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be the Chiefs. Or the Crusaders if their pack's good again. I mean, we'll wait and see on that one. The big thing to note about these starting lineups is Beauden Barrett's a 15, but also so is Damian McKenzie. Josh Jacobs going to be starting at 10 with Xavier Rowe. Cortez Ratiman's actually on the bench. Same with the Blues. They're favoring the start with Tofa Funaki, the normal starter. Finley Christie, he's also on the bench as well. But the super interesting thing to me, it is Damian McKenzie at 15, because after that hiding they took last year in the grand final, getting crushed up front, having all that time to stew on it. I mean, I think the way to really beat the Blues in this grinding forward style where you carry, you dominate the collision, you get that gain line, you eke forward, you build momentum. You can't beat them at that game. At least the Chiefs probably can't. They've tried. I think what you really have to do is you have to run that Blues pack around the park a bit. And I think that's why McKenzie's at fullback. I think he's going to do the sort of thing that we've seen from Beauden Barrett in the past, where he sort of uses a bit of a short kicking game and, tries to target those forwards, turn them around. With the Blues, sticking with Harry Plummer over Beauden Barrett, but keeping Beauden at 15. A lot of people were wondering what would happen with Beauden Barrett coming back this season. I'm not too surprised by this. I think he doesn't really suit how the Blues play and how Vern Cotter wants the Blues to play, because again, he likes to kick the ball a lot these days. He likes to leverage that short kicking game, and Vern, he hates kicking away the ball. He just, at the start of the season last year, for the first 4 or 5 rounds, the Blues, they looked a bit shaky. They would spread the ball, they'd lose it, they'd kick it away, and Vern, the big change he made, he just shut all of that down. He said, don't kick the ball away, just keep it in the forwards, and we're just going to keep grinding, and don't kick the ball, don't spread the ball, don't give it to the backs. If you get the ball, just smash it up to give the forwards time to reset. All we're doing is grinding. And once we did that, they really look strong, the Blues. So how does Beauden Barrett fit into that? What how do you use Beauden Barrett's skills in that type of game plan when he's at 10? I mean, you don't. It's going to be kind of funny to see McKenzie and Barrett both at 15 in this game. There could be some weird stuff going on. It could be kind of funny. Look, I mean, with this game, you got to back the Blues. They are at home. They are the champs. They crushed the Chiefs in the grand final last year, but they do have that big injury ward That's no joke. And the Chiefs, they've had all this time to think about it. I mean, what else are you going to think about after getting to the grand final last year and getting smashed? The only thing you have to solve for this new season is how do you beat the bloody Blues? How do you not get smashed up front? So they have to have worked something out, and they'll test it out in this game. It's round one. There's a lot of season to go, so why not test it out? If it doesn't work out, you can make those adjustments for the business end of the season. Interesting game. I still got to pick the Blues, but I think it will be close. I think it'll be by less than 12. But we'll see. Now, lastly, probably least as well, if I'm honest, Western Force versus Moana Pacifica. It says Saturday, 4:30 p.m. I'm not sure if that's right or not. Quick editing correction here. Force versus Pacifica. It will be 9:35 p.m. New Zealand time on the Saturday. These are the two games who are probably two of the weakest teams last year. They're playing in Perth, but the Force, they do have a much larger injury ward. The Pacifica missing 3 players. The big one probably Lotu Anisi. Poni Fa'amasili, he was one of their big off-season pickups. Would have been nice to have him. But yeah, I mean, look here for the Force. Harry Hoopert, Harry Johnson-Holmes, Bailey Kunzel. This guy who looks like he's probably related to Billy Proctor. I don't know, you tell me. But yeah, fair few injuries there for the Force. Pacifica this year, obviously making the big marquee signing of Artie Sevilla there with the big C next to his name. I mean, that's the big question mark over the Pacifica this year. Like, what is the impact of Artie going to be? Is he going to be able to inspire them to new heights? I don't know. I mean, he's one man out of 15 on the pitch, but I'm hopeful. They also have Jackson Garden Bishop. He'll be a steady hand for them in that 10 jersey. And also Solomon Alaimalo. I believe he went to league and came back. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, it's great to see Alaimalo back in Super Rugby, and I'm looking forward to watching him. This Force team, I mean, they do have a bit of experience there. They have Nick White, Darcy Swain's gone there. Big Carlo Tizzano makes all the tackles. Ikuasi, he's a good athlete. He's a good pickup for them. He's quite damaging at number 8. The legend, Harry Potter. It's going to stick it to these Muggle Pacifica. But, you know, with this game, I mean, for either team, it's probably their best chance to win a game this season. It is in Perth. The Perth locals, they do turn up there. I am inclined to back them. They do have that big injury ward, though. And with Artie Sevilla, it's a real unknown. The thing about the Force, though, is they're kind of a nuggety team. Like, their defense is a bit better than their position on the table sort of reflects. Their real problem is mostly on attack. They're just not very threatening. They don't score a lot of points. Whereas Moana Pacific, they probably are a bit more threatening in that front. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll go with Moana here. Moana, they did beat the Force last year at the same ground in Perth, 22-14. So I think it will be a close game. I think Moana will win by less than 12. That'll be a great start to their season, and hopefully they can kick on from there. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Next video, it will be going over the fantasy picks. I'll be going over my team, but also the other players who were looking like good options and why I didn't go for them. I wanted to do this video first, though, because I wanted to just establish some grounding for what the lay of the land is with these teams and how these teams play this year and how they match up, because this fantasy format, it really lends itself to playing the fixtures. So to do that, you before you pick your team, you need to look closely at the fixtures and see which teams are going to be forming and which the players and which teams are going to have the most opportunity to rack up those fantasy points. So subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for that next video if you're playing fantasy.